welcome to Diving into Deep Waters. I am your host, Erin Rowling, and it's been a hot minute since we've had a new episode of this podcast. It's just been an incredibly busy season of life. I'm pretty sure you picked up on that as I was leading up to all the things that were going to be happening for me this summer. And yeah, it's just been crazy. And it's one of those things that's really hard because you want to keep up with everything but that's not how it always goes. And I've learned some very valuable things over this month. I think it's been a month since we've recorded or had an episode. And that's been hard for me. I know some people are like, hey, my husband was one of them. He's like, hey, when are you going to start recording? And I was like, oh, it's coming because I wanted to. It's not because I didn't want to. It just felt like every time I was trying to get it done, there was other things that were popping up, other things that needed my attention, and some exhaustion. I'm not going to lie, some exhaustion and just feeling incredibly overwhelmed. I think we can all relate to those feelings and realize that sometimes when our plate is that full, we kind of need to look at what can we take off for a little while and pause it, if you will, and then pick it back up and move on. So I'm going to share some things that I've learned in the time that I was gone. There's no way we could fit that all in one podcast. So don't worry, this is not going to be a 2-hour long podcast. But in the midst of all of this, I have felt guilty. And every week that I would have this intention of recording, I would go to do it and it just wasn't happening. And sometimes when that happens, I'm going to share something with you that kind of was one of the things that I went through, because I think we all, when we start to feel like we're trying to do something, and it just is not happening, it can kind of make us want to quit, like give up and say, you know what, I'm just not even going to attempt to try to do that any longer. And one day while I was working out, I was feeling a little bit like I just can't get to this right now in my life. And I feel like I'm feeling myself. First and foremost, I felt like I was feeling myself. I felt like I was feeling you, the listener or the watcher, whichever way you listen or watch this podcast. And so I don't know, I was wrestling with that. And while I was working out, we were doing this incredibly hard move, which I wanted to quit. No doubt. I was like, I'm over this move. Let's move on to the next one. And the trainer said something. She said, don't quit, just take a break. And in the moment, that applied to the move that I was doing. I needed a hot second to continue. But instead of just like going right to giving up, I gave myself a moment and I thought, okay, now get back up. Now you can do it. And as the next week approached, I was like, oh, when am I going to fit this in? When am I going to be able to do this? Those words flooded to my mind. Don't quit, because that's how I was feeling. Not that I was going to quit the podcast, okay? But you know how thoughts are and feelings, they are not always rational sometimes. And so I just thought to myself, like, oh, and I just heard those words. Don't quit, just take a break. And so I gave myself a break. I gave also the people that work with me on this podcast have had a lot of things going on in their own lives. And so we took a break. And it probably won't be the last break that we take. And I think I'm learning through this process of life, even with this podcast, it's okay to take a break. And so I'm giving you permission, as I gave to myself, which, trust me, I don't think that's easy for any of us to do, to just say, oh, just take a break. There's like this turmoil that happens inside of us in order to do that, because it's just like, it's not natural for us. We thrive on busyness. We thrive on being overwhelmed, which, why does this make sense? Like, why do we do this to ourselves? And so when even the thought of like maybe not fulfilling something that we're trying to do is like, like a bad word to us. And taking a break is not a bad word. It's saying it's okay to take a break. So here I am to tell you we took a break. And if you need a break from something in your life, there's something, maybe you're in ministry and you serve on a team, or pastors take sabbaticals, just so you know, things like that. Or there's just like, I don't know, you all got stuff on your plate. I don't know what it all is, but I'm sure there are things that you may need to say, okay, I don't need to quit that, but I do need a break. I'm here to tell you it's okay to take a break, and I'm giving you permission. Take a break. It's perfectly fine. And then when you're okay and your plate has settled down a bit, mine settled down a tad. There's still lots going on, but I was like, I can do this. And I felt like I could give it everything that I need to, because that's what happens, right? If we don't take a break, maybe it's the thing that we're involved in isn't getting our full attention. And that's not fair to ourselves or to anybody else. So instead of doing that, just take a break. It's all good. I'm here to support you in taking a break. So, anyways, so what have I been up to? What have I not been up to? No, it's all good. I'm going to start off with just some advice, okay? Now, you're like, you just gave us advice. It's okay to take a break. I'm going to give you a little bit more advice, because especially if you ever have to do an open house or anything that you have to plan, I guess, just a few things that I've learned. Someone recently told me, they said, you said this years ago about an open house, and I took your advice. And I was like, hey, you know what? For those of you who will be doing this, it's most of you are already done with it. And you're like, wait, why didn't you record this before? Apply it to the next kid, or apply it to, I don't know, whatever. But I've learned a few things through having open houses, and I just thought I would share a few things with you. Maybe they apply to other areas of your life. I don't know. It's kind of interesting because with my son's open house, I originally, the original plan, because I know how stressful they are. This is my third one, so I do know how these things work. I originally thought he doesn't like people, so we'll just do a small family party. That was the original plan. I can't remember if I shared this or not, because it's been a little while, you guys. But if I can't remember, you probably don't remember. I don't know. So, but my son's father, his name is Paul, I am married to him, had some advice for my son when I said, let's just do a small family party, thinking this is doable. Like, I can do this. He said these words: you will get more money if you have a big open house. Now, money to my son is an important word. We call him Ebenezer Scrooge. Not in the bad ways of Ebenezer Scrooge, where he was like not I don't know. Is he generous? Good question. Actually, he can be. But he heard the words money, and he likes to grow his bank account. He's also very aware of money, which is a great thing, because most kids are not aware of money, but he's very aware about it, but almost to the point of it being like too aware. There is such a thing as being too aware of money. And so we're like, if he buys a sub and like I didn't make dinner, and he'll say, so like, since you didn't make dinner, like the sub was $3.67. If you want to give that back to me. And I'm like, you could buy that yourself, but who's paying attention? But apparently, because I didn't make dinner, that's my contribution to him, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, so he decided that you can make more money in an open house. So now he wants an open house. So then we were on the trend of like, okay, we're going to do an open house. And here's the things I've learned is, number one, the first thing I would say is, I got to find where I am. See, right off the bat, I'm like, where am I in my notes? Yeah, that's a good way to start off. Welcome back. I just wanted you to feel at home, so you knew that when I can't find my spot, that it's just like good times, like you're home. You're like, this is the podcast where she doesn't have it all together, because I don't. Okay, I know what it was. Just talk long enough, it'll pop back in your head. So the first thing I learned, first we were going to do it at our house. And as I was thinking about it, okay, when it's at your home, I think I did talk about like how I been working on our house, and my husband's like, "Why are you doing all this work on the house when no one's going to be there?" And I'm like, "Hey, it's we got a lot of stuff done and we can enjoy it now." But I did learn we decided to do it at our church, which hallelujah. What such a better choice, because we could go, we could set up ahead of time, get things in place because that needed to happen. And I will say, God was really gracious to me in that moment. Talk about God winks, right? We always talk about that because I had gotten everything together, took it up to the church, and I knew people are going to be there to help me, which is, I am very blessed to have a lot of people who are willing to help. The problem is sometimes that's overwhelming for me because if I don't feel like I know what I'm doing or what needs to be done, and then everyone's asking you, like, what can I do? What can I do? Which is great, right? I'm not complaining, but it can feel overwhelming. I don't know if anybody else ever feels like that. So I was dreading kind of decorating because I thought I'm going to get there and I don't know what I need done. And it was awesome because I got to the church. Nobody had gotten there yet. I was able to lay everything out in the piles that I needed. Like, okay, I need someone to do this. I need someone to do this. I need someone to do this. The Lord was so gracious and kind to me to give me that 15 minutes to sort myself out. And people came, and I was not overwhelmed at all. I was just like, thank you, Jesus, for knowing me better than I know myself, and that I just need 15 minutes. And it was wonderful. So, everyone who came and helped, thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys were tremendous, and I could enjoy it. I wasn't overwhelmed. It was amazing. So, I learned if you can take something off your plate, and even if it's not what you originally planned, this is with anything, because sometimes we get stuck on something. Maybe it's not the best thing for us. It's okay to change plans, you guys. It's okay. I'm giving you a lot of it's okay. Maybe I should call this podcast It's Okay. No, we got a better title. So, second piece of advice. I did not make the food myself. I did do that with my first daughter's open house. That was a mistake. I was very stressed out about the food. The only thing that I made for my son's open house was the guacamole because I love me some guac. And I'm not saying mine is the best, but mine is good. And I want the guac I have either to be the same as mine or better because there's better guac than mine. But it needs to be good. Paul and I went away for our anniversary and there was like guac on the side for like a burger. And I looked at the waiter, and I said, how good is the guac? And he looked at me and go, because I make good guac and I want good guac. And he goes, yeah, maybe not. I appreciated his honesty. He was like, some lady asked me about guac. I didn't care. I want guac. I want it to be good. So I made the guacamole. But we have a guy in our church who makes the best Mexican food. I mean, like, he makes things that I will eat that I will not even eat at a Mexican restaurant. His beans and his rice are like none other. His enchiladas, like none other. It's literally like the best Mexican food here in our little town. And that's what was being served at my son's open house. And then I also had a friend who stepped up. I got a little worried because she helped me with one of my other kids' open houses. And then someone told me that she was helping them with their open house. Okay, I don't own this woman, but I felt a little bit like, excuse me? She helps me. She can't help you. Now, this is not the Christian attitude, you guys, but this is how I felt. And so I called her and I was like, hey, so I heard that you were helping this other person. And she said, don't you worry. I already knew about Joe's open house. I already knew you were going to ask me. So I already took it off. And I was like, again, hallelujah. Because she knows she does catering. She knows how it works. She'll stay on top of it all, which here's another piece of advice. When you have an open house, have someone in charge. So you can be present. And that goes with any party. Like any responsibility you put on yourself is going to make it so much harder. So the least amount of responsibility you can have, and I know we all think I can do it. Yes, you can do it, but you will stress yourself out. So don't. We have a fabulous baker in our church. She makes these scotcheroos, which if you don't know what a scotcheroo is, it is butterscotch. It's basically like I'm thinking of the name. You guys are yelling at like a Rice Krispie treat, but made with butterscotch. Oh, and then you put chocolate on top. Oh, I'm pretty sure I ate my weight in those things because we had them at home. We had leftovers and I could not keep out of them. I would, you know how like you like take a little slice and then before you know it, you've taken another little slice and then before you know it, you take another little slice, which equals like half the pan. That's what happened. Also, a friend and her daughter make fabulous cupcakes. It was all covered. So the only thing I had to do was a guac, and it was fabulous. It was so good. So make the least amount of things you can. Also the chips. We have the guy who made all of our Mexican food. His mom makes chips, and I told her when she dropped him off, I said, "So I have one more graduation party in 3 years. If you could just not retire before 3 years." She goes, "Oh, honey, I don't know about that." She goes, "I don't know if I'll be around." I was just like, that's a terrible thing to pray. Can you just keep around so you can make chips? I'm just kidding. I would not pray that. But anyways, and last but not least, print your pictures. This is specific to open houses because I don't know, if your kid is as you're coming up on open houses, maybe all your pictures will be on your on your phone. But again, that's not printed, you guys. It's not how back in the day we used to take the little rolls of film. Some of you will not even know what this is. And you used to drop it off and you'd have to pick up your pictures and you used to have to hope that your pictures were in focus or not grainy or that you actually got the shot. Not like today where you can take 15 photos and pick out the best one. No, you got what you got and that's what you got. And for me, I had a lot of pictures on CDs. So yeah, let's just say they were none. I think I had 5 or 6. I want to say 6 CDs that had not been printed. And it basically my kid's life. So I was like, then I might as well just print all of these because then I'll have all the pictures. So there's my last little piece of advice for all of that. It has nothing spiritual about any of that except for take a break. That there can be some spiritual things in there. But as far as open house, yeah, those are the things that I've learned. And I would love to pass on that for you who have future open houses in your life. And also I can look back at this and remind myself of I have one left, you guys, one left to do. So as I go into the theme of this podcast, I read a scripture that I thought summed up nicely where I was going in my head. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about pictures. We're going to go back to that because something happened with that. But I want to share a verse first that I think embodies the topic of this podcast. And it's actually found in Ephesians 2, verse 10. And it says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." Now, I think it's very easy in life to just let things happen. Okay? Like things happen all the time, all the way around us. But what I hope, or my hope is that things aren't just happening, but that we're taking notice of what's happening. Just like we've talked about God winks, like being aware of when I received a lot of messages of people saying like, I am being so much more intentional about paying attention to God winks. Loved that. Like that made my day. And then when we started talking about being a part of God winks for people said I'm being way more intentional. So that's one of my goals, I guess, through this podcast is to be intentional and not just things happen, but what is happening, paying attention to what is happening. And I don't believe there's any coincidences at all. Not like, oh, well, you just happen to be in the right place at the right time. I do not think that is how God works or orchestrates things at all. I think this verse kind of debunks that, if you will. And I also think that God can use anyone. No one is not usable. We have podcasts that we have talked about that. A lot of people think you're just existing. You just happen to be on this planet. I don't believe that for a second. There's way too many scriptures. We've talked about those. We're not going to go into those today. But just like our God wings, if you will, I think that God sets us up to be used. I'll say it again. I believe God has things happen, and it's a setup for us to be used. And not set up like in a bad way, but in a very intentional way. A way for him to be like, hey, I can use you in this situation. And before you freak out and be like, oh my gosh, now I got to be aware of God winks. Now I got to be aware of how can God use me. That's like too much for my brain to encompass, okay? It's like take in, because I don't want to freak anybody out. I don't want anybody to like turn this off and say, no, thank you. But notice that it says this, because I think this will like put all your fears to bay. So it says that he prepared us for these moments. All we have to do is walk in them. Now, I found myself in some of these situations, and for me, I feel like sometimes my setup is when I feel the most inconvenienced. Can anyone relate? Like, I feel like God sometimes is like, you're incredibly inconvenienced by the situation or what's happening around you. Therefore, let me just do a little setup for you to be used. I don't know. God has a sense of humor, you guys. And so I'll just share a little thing that happened. So when I was printing the pictures, it was a whole ordeal. First of all, you have to do something sometimes and you think it'll take this amount of time. And then you realize, no, it takes way longer than you originally thought. Well, that's exactly what happened with this. I drove to another town to go get them printed because it was going to take way too long to upload them from my computer that was old, that the pictures were on. And so I was like, in my mind, I'll just take the disc, take them to Meijer, because last I knew, Meijer, if you're not from Michigan, you won't know what Meijer is, but it's like a Walmart kind of thing, Target, superstore kind of thing. And so I had liked their quality of pictures, so I'll just run over there, I'll pop those babies in, I'll pick what I want, print out my pictures, I'm good to go. I think I gave myself an hour, which I should have known better. Well, I got to Meijer. Guess what? Meijer does not do pictures anymore. So right off the bat, was annoyed. And so then I'm looking up what store does, and I'm like, Walmart. Well, I didn't love their quality as much, but I was like, girl, you got to get this done. And you've already wasted half an hour trying to figure out where to get these pictures printed. So now I've got a bad attitude. Not going to lie. I was not very happy. I get there, and of course the machine doesn't want to work well for me. I finally figured it out, but it was like took a while for it to like upload the pictures, and then it would upload like one picture out of 600 photos. Yes, you heard me right, 600 photos. And then I was like, oh, what is going on? So I am probably visibly frustrated. I don't know. Probably the air around me was frustrated for anybody walking by. I was just like, this is going to take way longer than an hour. And I don't have time for this because, of course, I procrastinated. There were some other reasons involved. I'll get to those. But that's why I said print your pictures. Like print them every year. I don't know. I have a friend who does that. That's amazing. I keep saying I'm going to do that. I don't do it. Here we are, third graduation, open house. Still haven't learned the whole picture thing. Maybe by Abby? I don't know. But I'll probably have a story about it with Abby. That's just how it seems to go. Or I could learn my lesson and print my pictures. So I'm sitting there. A lady sits down next to me. Now, I was a little annoyed that she sat there because I thought I can double duty it, right? I can stick a disc in here. I can stick a disc in here. It takes all this time to get it all figured out. No big deal. This is like, I can multitask and I can get this done. No, some girl sits down next to me. She plugs in her phone. She's looking at photos, and I'm feeling things in my heart for the fact that she took the machine that I wanted. But then I noticed she kind of was getting teary-eyed. Now, Actually, like right now, like my left eye is like super runny because of allergies. So I thought, I'm not going to say anything or do anything. She probably has allergies. But then I looked over a few seconds later and she was just like full on tears streaming down her face. And I mean, just crying. And like, it is amazing when an opportunity comes up for us, a setup from God, where all of your annoyances, all the things that seemed important in the moment, just dissipate. They just fade away. And so I looked at her. I had no idea what was going on, but I obviously, like, pictures were bringing some emotions for her. Got up out of my seat and I said, "Are you okay?" And she just looked at me and I mean, just full on started crying and just started telling me that her dad had just passed away. He had been sick for a very long time. She was his caregiver. She needed to print pictures for the funeral. And like without even thinking, I like get up out of my chair, stand next to her. I wrap my arms around her. She's crying and I'm just saying, speaking to her and stuff and sit back down. She's telling me stories about her dad and all of these things and, got her pictures printed and everything, and gets up to go. And she's like, "Thank you so much for taking your time to just like give me a hug and listen to me about my dad." And ended up her son had just graduated too, so we talked about that. I mean, probably 45 minutes was spent with this lady. It was such a great opportunity to just be used. I wasn't looking for it because clearly I was like, annoyed the whole time before that. But there was this moment where God was like, I'm going to put you in this situation because if we think for a second that these moments are just coincidence, shame on us. Shame on us. Like the Lord knew there's this woman and she is hurting. And I'm going to place, even in the most annoying moment of your week, I'm going to place you, you're going to sit next to her, and I'm going to use you. I'm going to equip you because I have a purpose for you in this moment. It is a setup for his glory, for us to do his work, to be used, to be the hands and feet of Jesus. What a moment. I did not care after that it took me 3 hours to print pictures. The annoyance left. And I thought, wow, what if Meyer had the photos and I could have printed them? I would have missed out on this moment. And I didn't want to miss out on it. God sets us up for his purposes and for his plans. We're on a mission. We're missionaries for Christ. There's so many things we could call this podcast, but he gives us these missions, these moments, these setups, and it's like, okay, I've equipped you for this moment. Because if you think this is the first time that I have gotten up and just hugged a stranger, my kids will tell you no. They kind of are like, "Mom's weird. She'll just hug people." But I have been equipped to do that. My husband says, I talked about emotions recently, and he's like, you amaze me that you can just start crying with somebody. Like you can feel that empathy for someone. That's something God has equipped me with because there's a purpose for it. And I'm not the only one that he does that with. You are equipped. Look, I was just talking to a young mom the other day and she just was done with her kid. And I looked at her and said, "You are equipped with everything you need to be his mama." And she looked at me and she's not a Christian. Okay, so I couldn't use Christian lingo, but I was like, "You have everything you need." And she was like, I could just see the shift change in her of like, okay, I'm equipped. I'm equipped to do this job of being a mom. We're equipped. Like I said, there was something else that was going on right before that. I can't blame it why my pictures weren't printed, but I will say my uncle had passed away a while ago. And where do you think that his celebration of life landed? Well, it landed the weekend before my son's open house. which is not good timing, my friends. That brought a lot of stress to me. And because it was like, oh, I have this weekend, you feel like you can get so much done in a weekend opposed to a week. And it was like, okay, this is the last weekend. We're going to get so much done, but poof, that's gone. That's no longer on the table. And what's interesting to me is I feel like we not only can God set us up for these moments for ourselves, okay? But I also think that we can be cheerleaders of others being set up by God. And I'll give you an example. So I flew out to Minneapolis for my uncle's celebration of life. And I had to get up super early and flew there. When I got there, I was hungry, which the combination of not eating and being tired are not the best combinations for me. Some people do very well with that, but I do not. And so I got there and I kind of thought I would just like to lay down for a little bit, just like sit, maybe take a little nap, or whatever, because that's what I need sometimes. And so I get there. I was meeting my uncle's wife. They got married a month before he passed away because she was his caregiver while they were dating. And he wanted to make sure she was cared for after he passed away, which was beautiful that he did that. And so we had never met her. She's this tiny thing. She's like an Energizer bunny. I mean, she can run circles around people. And so she's adorable. We fell in love with her when we met her. But what I wasn't prepared for, and I'm also like one of those people, I just have issues, you guys. I need to eat, I need sleep, and I need to be prepared. So I knew that they had had this huge flood and that a lot of the house had to be redone because of this huge flood. What I didn't know is that a lot of the work was still being done and the house was in disarray. I don't function the best in disarray. Okay. Like a little mess, I'm okay. But when it's, things have been torn up, things have not been put back, kind of thing, it's a little bit harder of a situation for me. And so I walk into the house and the kitchen was perfect. The kitchen was good. But the rest of the home was in need of a deep clean and organized and things put back. And me being tired and hungry and all of those things struggled significantly. So much so I had to take a little walk and call my husband and kind of bend his ear for a little bit of how I was feeling. And he's so kind. And I was like, I don't even know where to begin. It's overwhelming to me. And so my sister comes in though. And it was just like, God gives capabilities to different people. Sometimes I think we sit there and we're so jealous of what other people possess and their giftings and so forth. But it was one of those moments I just was in awe of my sister's giftings. And I just felt like it was a setup for her. She was equipped for that moment to do this work that needed to be done that blessed my aunt so much. And it was just one of the most amazing things to watch her walk in those giftings. And she just literally was like, she looked, she assessed, she looked at us and said, okay, because here's the thing. If it's your stuff, you can move it wherever you want. When you're dealing with someone else's stuff, it's their stuff. And you have to be mindful of that. And my sister was so gentle and so caring about everything. And she got us all to work. I mean, she was telling us, like, okay, you do this, you do this. And in a couple hours, that home was clean. It was in such a better position because we were also having I guess this is what freaked me out. They said that there was 30 people coming over the next day of his friends. And I was like, where are we putting these people? Where are they going to sit? And even my aunts were like, we're going to go get the food and you guys figure this out. And I was like, I can't figure this out. I didn't need to figure it out. Okay. I just needed to be willing to help my sister. And so she had it. She had it like places for people to sit, and she had the home in such a better way that when we left, my aunt could continue working on the things she needed to work on, but in a clean, somewhat organized space. It was amazing. It was so, so cool to see her flourish in her giftings and the things that God has equipped her with for that moment. I don't know. It just was, I guess, a setup, in also the fact that sometimes our weaknesses, like we can see weaknesses in ourselves. I kind of had a look at you moment, which, yeah, I know you all know what my look at you means. Not the best compliment usually. But I did that to myself. I do that to myself. I'll be like, look at you whining about sleep and not having food and not being able to function in this environment. Look at you. But then came my sister. And in my weakness, she had it. And it was just, I don't know. Don't just look for the moments that God gives you, but look for the moments that God gives the people around you and encourage it. And be like, oh, because at first I was like, why couldn't I get myself together? And I was like, this isn't about you. This is about her flourishing and God equipping her and her things. She's his workmanship, and she was created for good works, and God has prepared her for this moment. Be other people's cheerleaders in those moments that God's like, no, it's not about you. I'm going to use this person. It was awesome to watch. I have one more little story to share. But before I do that, I'm going to give another recommendation. Because I've never been a part of something like this, and it's, first of all, I don't want anyone in your family to pass away. Okay? I'm not like, so when the next person, passes away. But this is just something that I gleaned. And I think because we knew our uncle, but we didn't know his life. We didn't know his friends. We hadn't met his wife. So there was a big chunk of his life that we didn't know or weren't a part of. And so what was kind of cool is, like I said, my aunt had invited these 30 friends, his closest friends, to come over. And she wanted them to meet his sisters and his nieces and any family that was able to come in for the celebration of life and kind of bring his worlds together, if you will, because it was like his church group. He was part of a sailing group. He was part of a kind of like a men's encounter kind of thing that we have that in our area. It's called Men's Encounter. Theirs was called something different. I don't remember what it's called, but it was something like that, where he was a part of leading groups and helping men through their addictions. He was a therapist, so he kind of brought that side of things. The people he worked with through therapy and stuff like that. And so all of these worlds that didn't all know each other, we all had this beautiful opportunity to come together. And my uncle loved there was a few things he loved. He loved all these people. He loved God. He loved music. He loved good food and red wine. And not like the $10 bottle of red wine. We're talking expensive red wine. I've never seen so much red wine in my life. And I don't really like red wine, but there was some good red wine in there. Maybe because it was very pricey. I don't know. But anyways, but it was kind of cool because at the end of the evening, we all sat on the porch as the sun was setting, and we're telling our stories or feelings about my uncle, which what I think was important about this was the next day was the celebration of life. And we, as each person shared at his celebration, we had a better understanding of who they were. And that's why I would recommend, if you, God forbid, have to do a funeral or a celebration of life, is to meet the day before. There was something really special about it that I've never experienced. So I'm just sharing it with you. But one of my uncle's friends shared how God had set up their friendship, which I have seen in my own life how God has set up the friendships that I have in my life. I wasn't looking for them. They were not coincidence. They were definitely, I can see how God was very purposeful in setting up the people that are in my life currently. And I am so, so thankful for that, because I don't know if I would be the person I am today without those people. They are a beautiful part of my life. They inspire me, they encourage me. I don't know if I'd have this podcast without them, because they're so encouraging and I love them. You guys know who you are. But my uncle's friend shared, he said, I just want to share about my friendship. And it was a story that my uncle never got to hear. So it was really cool that he shared it with us. So he said, my uncle is one of those people, like if he found something that he liked, he really got into it. Like even if he wasn't that good. And apparently he was not a good hunter, but he met this guy who was basically traveled the world doing hunting. And he actually was a game hunter, and like a game hunter, like a warden. So like he had to make sure like people were doing it correctly and stuff like that, but also a big hunter himself. So my uncle met him and it was like, I'd like to hunt. And they went hunting and he said, he was not a good shot, but he really loved doing it. And they really built this beautiful friendship through hunting together, which I guess you spend a lot of time together when you hunt. And so he tried out his friend's gun, and it was a very expensive gun. And his friend said, no, my uncle's like, I want to buy your gun. And he's like, this is for like experienced people. You don't need this gun, but we'll find you a good gun. So they ended up buying a gun. He never got any better, he said. So, but they continued to hunt together. Well, one time while they're hunting together, my uncle's friend had been struggling through a relationship that his son was in. And he didn't know how to approach it. Like, should he say something to his son? Should he just keep his thoughts to himself? Because his son hadn't really asked for his advice. And so he said to my uncle, who's a therapist, he said, I don't want to bother you about therapy stuff, but I need some advice. What should I do? And my uncle said, well, if you really love your son and if you really think that this relationship is not good, because it was headed towards marriage and he was afraid he would be married to someone that it was not good and it would not end well. And so he said, if you feel that way, take your son to lunch and share your heart with him. Not tell him what to do, but just share your heart. So he took his advice. He took his son to lunch and he said, hey, I just need to share my heart with you. Not knowing how his son would receive it, but his son broke down and said, you don't know what a relief it is to know that you see the same things I do. Ended up breaking it off, did not marry that girl, God brought another girl in his life. And a few weeks before my uncle passed, he got married. So it turned out all good. And he said, I love this girl. She's a great part of our family. Felt very good about it. So when my uncle passed away, my aunt took the gun that his friend had helped him buy and gave it to him and said, you can have this. This was part of your relationship and your friendship. And so this father shared how he was going to take that gun and give it to his son. I'm going to get weepy here. Give it to his son and say, when I talked to you about that relationship, it was actually Thad. That was my uncle's name. Thad, who told me that I should come talk to you. And I'm so glad that you listened. And I want to give you the gun that was Thad's gun. Ugh, you guys. We were all crying. I still feel emotional. I asked him if I could share this on the podcast because it was just the most beautiful story of a father not knowing what to do, but stepping on the ledge. And then this whole full circle moment of a friendship that God had placed in both of these men's life. And it didn't just affect the father, it affected where the son went in his life, like how his life turned out. And so, I don't know, it was just such a cool thing that my uncle had been empowered by the Holy Spirit because he loved Jesus very much. But just to go out there and share that with this man share it with his son. We never know how us being used can not only affect the person directly that we're with, but how does it affect other people? Because when we are willing to be used, that's going to affect the person we're being used to minister to. But then that person, maybe it's not their son, like in this story, but it's going to be someone else. So there's a ripple effect. And I think we forget about that so much in life, that it's not just about us. And we have to remind ourselves of this, because we can get into this headspace where it's like, well, it's just me. I only affect myself. No, we affect the people around us. And if we're not being used to affect those people, how are they going to be used to affect the people? It just keeps going. And I think that's how God set it up. He was intentional with that. So I want to leave you with this, that we have a purpose. I want you to hear that nice and loud and clear. We have a purpose. We were created so intentionally by God. It's not a by chance thing. We have been equipped and prepared for those moments that God has for us. And all we have to do, okay, before you stress yourself out, all you have to do, God's done all the work. You realize that? If he's prepared you, he's equipped you, he's done all the work. All you have to do is allow God to set you up and just walk in it. Be used. You have everything you need. He's equipped you. He's done it all to equip you to be used. So go be used and let God set you up on some beautiful things, not only for yourself, but be there to encourage others, and let it be a ripple effect. I love you. I'm happy to be back, and we're just going to keep diving in together.